Okay, great. You're going to have a seat right here. Listen up. Great. Okay. All right then. We're going to trade.
Great. In this room, I feel more comfortable this way. Some people know why. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity. It means a lot. And I really appreciate so many different groups that have come together to do this. Before I proceed, I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Fort William First Nation, part of the 1850 Robinson Superior Treaty. And that is important because it's all about the land that we have. I've been in economic development for 25 years, but the issue of land is an important one. Just give you some of my background. My family also finds the Nor'Wester Escarpment to be a very important part of our existence. My grandfather had settled just down from, I'll say Bo Daddy's instead of Uncle Frank's, down on the 15th Side Road. That was the family potato farm. And so that was in the early 1930s. My grandfather always had an affinity for the Nor'Wester mountain range. So did my father. My dad, one of his most pleasant experiences that my dad used to have in the morning is watching as the sun moved along. Every day as the sun moved along the Nor'Wester mountain range. That was important to him. In fact, having a house that he could see the Nor'Wester mountains was really important. It's also very important to me and my family. When I first met my wife, one of the first conversations I had to her, she was asking me about where I live, and I talked about the Nor'Wester mountains. I talked about the door in the mountain on Mount McCrae. And these are important things. This is an area that is, to many of us, I would say it's a sacred area. It is one that we do not want to see desecrated by development, that we do not need, that doesn't enhance anything in our area. So I just want to make a couple statements on that before we begin. The other thing that I want to talk about a little bit is some of my background. I know quite a number of you here today, but maybe not everyone, or some of you might be wondering why I'm putting my name in. First of all, let me say that I went away to university, and when I graduated, I wanted to come back and I wanted to work in Northwestern Ontario. I've heard the term a few times that we thought we were on the cusp. I did before, I still do now. I think that there are great opportunities throughout Northwestern Ontario, but an opportunity is just that until you realize it. And I don't think we have been doing enough to realize those opportunities. My work has been on development. I've worked as a business consultant to attract more small business, to help small business to grow. And that's why a lot of the policies that have been happening over the last few years have really resonated with me and have been a concern. And I'll express some of those either now or with some of the questions that come up about what some of the impacts of government policy and of the hindrances, the additional costs, the paperwork, what all that has meant to small business. And that is really the backbone of our area. We know it, we've heard it, but it's true. Those are the ones that hire. Those are the ones that bring us our goods and services. And when they start to wonder why I'm in business at all, why do I continue on, that's a huge concern for me. I've worked on resource development, whether we're talking mining projects, hydroelectric projects, talking about forestry. A lot of those, my mantra has been, how do we maximize the value of the resources we have? And by maximize, we're talking sustainable as well. This isn't about unsustainable projects that you go in because we live here. We're part of this. That's what I've always been in support of. So I've worked on these types of projects for a long time. I believe these are the kinds of projects that we need. And again, those have been hindered. Those have been hindered amazingly. When we talk about some of the mining projects that haven't happened, it's all about we've got potential, but we can't seem to make that go. With the forest industry, we've been doing the lowest common denominator as far as this goes. Instead of maximizing the value of the forest resources we have, how can we do it sustainably? How can we get more and more jobs and investment out of the forest resources? Hydro projects, when you take a look at some of the incredible opportunities that we are going to have for mining, and if people want to talk about the Ring of Fire, that's an important element, but there are way more projects beyond that. How many minutes?
1 minute.
1 minute. Well, there's many more projects than that, and we need to make those things happen. So my last point is, but why are you running? I was with the Chamber of Commerce. Part of the reason that I'm running is because I have had so many encounters where we were not making things finalized. One of those is the generating station. I'm sure that's going to come up. I can tell you right now, the second time when that was canceled on November 1st, I met with our MPP and I said, Bill, what do you need from us? What do you need from the business community? And he said, you're just going to do what you want to do anyway. I said, no, this is important to all of us. For our future, what we're doing with that generating station, converting it to gas. And again, you'll just do what you want to do anyway. Well, what I want to do now is I want to work for you, I want to work for the people of Northwest Ontario to bring jobs and investment. That's what I want to do, and that's why I'm running now. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm not going to make you, but if you want to stand up, we have this mic here.
Oh.
That, so.
Again, in this room, I have had a microphone once or twice.
All right, so now, Mr. Wilson, you're going to be asked the exact same 4 questions that previous candidates were asked. Again, you're going to have 2 minutes to respond. You're going to be given a 20-second warning.
I should take this piece of paper.
So first, I'd like to call upon Chief Georgianne Morso of the Fort William First Nation to ask the very first question. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My question is in relation to the treaties, and again, I have to thank you as well for acknowledging the treaty on which we are here this evening. In what concrete ways will your party defer to or support the historical treaty-based relationship between First Nations and the Crown in Northern Ontario? In your answer, please avoid deference to the Indian Act. As an Anishinaabe, we are moving away from the Act and are seeking partners with creative solutions for deepening our existing treaty relationship.
All right, how's this? All right, thank you very much for your question, and it is an important one. A lot of my background has been working with, bringing together Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal businesses, partnerships, working with our First Nations. I've had incredible opportunities to do that. Two parts of an answer, and I hope I'm able to hit them. One is the importance of the duty to consult. That is a government responsibility, is the duty to consult. It's not up to businesses. Grand Chief Harvey Esno at a conference I was at specifically said, the First Nations and business, those are partnerships. We need those partnerships to come together to achieve the economic development, because the treaty is our treaty too. It's the treaty between ourselves and the First Nations and the government. That's where those opportunities are going to be. So it's making sure that the treaties are worked through, that we are part of that treaty. So the issue of consultation is huge. And when you leave it up to companies to consult instead of the government, you're already on a bad trend. And that's why so many things have not happened. That's why those opportunities have not been able to be realized. I want to make sure that our party, and I have talked to them about this and I will continue, is that we do the consultation is required. We will do this in partnership. I've said too many times people want to do something for the First Nations, or worse, to the First Nations. I want to do it with the First Nations. That's the whole different way that I've always operated. Whether it's trade conferences, whether it's working together on projects, that's what we need to do. And it's only through partnerships that we are going to succeed. If I can, one last point is, my proudest moment in 2010 when I was with the Chamber is when I was invited by Anishinaabe Nation at their rally at Queen's Park to speak on behalf of the business community against the Far North Act. I have written extensively on it. I will continue to fight that with every breath till the end, because we will get rid of that, because it is impeding the progress and impeding our ability to see through the treaties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miigwech.
Great. Next, we have Irene Bond from the Northwest Mountain Escarpment Protection Committee.
Hello. Manitoba Hydro has announced, after a 6-year study of existing wind farms between 2007 and 2013, that wind energy is economically unfeasible and no longer supportable. They found wind generation during peak load hours, when it was needed, was 0 or near 0. As a result, no new wind farms will be constructed. The same inefficiencies of wind energy production and availability when it is surplus and unneeded apply here in Ontario, where we regularly pay others to take our excess power. Meanwhile, the Liberals on March 31st announced they're going ahead with more big wind farms. Do you think that this is a good idea, with rates projected to increase 45% over the next 5 years? And what would your party do to stop this waste?
Wow, the answer is no, right out of the gate. No, I hope you'll share that broadly, that information, especially from Manitoba Hydro. I mean, this is where we've had a government that has decided that this isn't about economics. This isn't about the economics for all of us. This is about ideology. Energy is not an ideology issue. It is about economics. When I was talking, I was at a restaurant on the highway yesterday, and this is what the woman said to me. She goes, are we supposed to serve breakfast at midnight? Because our power costs are so high during the day, we can't operate our restaurant off-peak. That makes no sense, and yet that's the kind of discussions that people are having now. Because instead of taking a look at proper ways, hydroelectricity, that's our ace in the hole, right? We do not have a competitive advantage in solar and wind versus anybody else. And as you're saying right now, Manitoba has figured that out. Our competitive advantage is in hydro. How can we, instead of making people jump through smaller and smaller and farther hoops, be able to make those hydro projects come together? And I can tell you right now, the mining projects that we're looking at in the north, they need power. Where best to have the power? Hydroelectricity. All of a sudden you've got the mining operations, the hydro, all working in sync. That's how you create an economy, especially with some of the First Nations entities that are there, some of the different bands. That's how you do it. It's hydroelectricity and mining. So our party says repeal immediately the Green Energy Act. It does not make any sense to be spilling water. You're paying twice, right? You're paying exorbitant amounts for wind, and then you're spilling water, which is a lot cheaper, and you're doing it at the worst time. Because as everybody says...
20 seconds.
20 seconds. As everybody says, and I could talk about the conversion plant, is that during the third week in January, when we really need the energy, there's no wind. Right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Zig Polkowski, the Mayor of the Municipality of Neving.
Hi, Harold. The city of Fort William, now Thunder Bay, acquired 20,000 acres of property in the Black Township, part of municipality of Neving, in the early 1900s. Most of those lands were purchased as a result of bankruptcies, threats of expropriation, or outright purchases from Ontario Crown at below market prices because it was for the explicit purpose of protecting Loch Lomond water supply for the city of Fort William residents. Now that Thunder Bay no longer needs the water supply, what will you and your party do, whether in government or opposition, to support the absolute protection from development of those lands in our municipality?
Wow, thank you for that question. I should also say, full disclosure, where we're sitting now was part of Neving Township until 1970, when the city took this land over. So, I mean, this used to be Neving as well. Well, the whole issue about the watershed, I mean, we need to protect our watersheds. It's not like we have a shortage of land through northwestern Ontario. It's not like we have a shortage of land in this area. There are important things we have to protect. Watersheds is key. I remember, just a side note, when they were talking about the Oak Ridges moraine 15 years ago, and I said to the Minister of Municipal Affairs at the time, I said, please, on behalf of the people of northwestern Ontario, protect the Oak Ridges moraine. And he looked at me and says, why do you care about the Oak Ridges moraine? I said, because if you don't, you'll feel so bad you'll make another big park in northwestern Ontario. But we have watersheds that need protection. That is one of them. As you've identified, I mean, all of those issues, that was supposed to be bequeathed, if you will, to Fort William and should have been maintained. How they're able to take land that should have been set aside and all of a sudden develop it when there might have been things that were more sustainable, more acceptable, but it has to be done in full consultation with Fort William First Nation. The fact that that was not done, and this type of a project, we can't go down this road again. A lot of people in this room, let's be honest, you've taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of sweat to try to keep this project from happening. And if we don't solve that now, earnest, something else could come down the pipe. I think that this makes all the sense in the world. This needs to be saved. I will be working adamantly with my party to make sure that that's one that's on the top of the list. Because let's talk about this. We need sustainable development. We need development, but we also need to protect those lands that are required for our, not just for our future use.
20 seconds.
Not just for our future use, but lands that are important to all of us. So I thank you very much for that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Willie Lacey. She's a resident of the Neving ward here in Thunder Bay.
Hi, Harold. The east-west transmission line from Wawa to Thunder Bay is said to be needed to stabilize availability and electrical energy in this area. If this line is built, it could replace the need for Thunder Bay generating plant. What assurance will your party give that this plant will be fully converted to natural gas or biomass fuel to ensure reliable power is produced here in our region and for our region, and not brought in from nuclear plants in southern Ontario?
Another excellent question, and unfortunately, the east-west tie line is going to be incidental because they say it's going to come on in 2018. Anybody would want to put out their hand that thinks that's possible? No, me either. So that isn't going to happen. Now that they're off coal, what's going to happen is the third week in January in 2015, we're in some trouble unless something happens really quickly, right? We know that this issue about 15 million tons or 15,000 tons of Norwegian pellets is not going to do it. Every year, I've looked at the charts, every year, the third week in January. This year was much worse than that, but the third week in January is when we need that. So that isn't going to be our answer. Our answer has to be converting. It should have been converted twice. It hasn't been, and we can come up with all sorts of excuses why it didn't happen. As your MPP, you need to be on top of that. If the city didn't do something, help to educate them. The people in this community need that power. There are other alternatives, though. I mean, the issue about gas, somebody was even talking to me about it, and again, don't think that this might be possible, but there is a gas line that went to the old Abitibi consolidated plant. You know, is that possible to be able to hook up with? I don't know that, but I know that there's a lot of other opportunities that are out there, and we need to pursue those. We need to make sure that we're not going to be caught without power for next year, because that is ticking. And we've been warning about this for a couple of years. The Northwest Energy Task Force has done a lot of work. I'll be sitting down with them because they do have some good ideas what's going on. But you're right, that east-west tie line, first of all, it's not going to help us in the short term, and it's not a solution to us in the longer term. Again, we've got huge hydroelectric projects we could do. We should be bringing in lines from Manitoba. We've even got opportunities with Minnesota. I was talking to them in Atikokan. There's some really interesting ideas that they have there too for energy, and so we're bringing it in when it's best for us, and we're not selling it at a loss. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Harold. We're going to have you just have a seat at the back.